I'm Mike.
I'm Sam. Let's get into it.
Yeah, but I saw your shirt in one of the buildings back there. So we found your shirt. Did you see that?
Yeah, I think the last time I took my shirt off was after the game. I gave it to my dad, and I ain't put one on since.
Welcome back. Today we have episode 29. We got a bunch of signings in football, college basketball, NBA, but we're going to start off with the Brooklyn Nets. Obviously, NBA is returning to play with the Bubble League, and the Brooklyn Nets are bringing not the most notable squad to Orlando this year. Obviously, Kevin Durant injuries with his Achilles, not going to be able to play. Kyrie Irving not playing. Deandre Jordan getting coronavirus, not playing. Wilson Chandler opting out, and Spencer Dinwiddie also testing positive coronavirus. So we don't know the future with him. So the Brooklyn Nets team is completely not what it used to be. So I don't know what's going to happen with the team. What are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, they're going to go out to the Orlando bubble looking like the 2013 no-name Lakers squad that they put together when Kobe Bryant was injured. It's going to be really interesting to see. Potentially, I think it's not off the table for the Brooklyn Nets to pull out of the entire tournament, even though that is just crazy to say considering they're in the playoffs right now with all things said, but considering their schedule, obviously, like Sam just said, considering so many players not being able to come to the tournament, kind of a mini outbreak for the Brooklyn Nets organization with COVID. I mean, you have Spencer Dinwiddie, their best healthy player right now, get COVID. Then they're arguably their second best healthy player right now, and Deandre Jordan also getting COVID. I mean, it's going to be really interesting. They're going to have to sign a bunch of players that have never even played in the organization. Not only that, it's just going to be such a quick turnaround for this team to interview a bunch of players, bring them in for a tryout. It's just going to be very unlikely for the Nets to get 15 ready players by the Orlando bubble tournament. So again, I'm going to be interested to see if they actually pull out of this tournament entirely.
Yeah, and then like you said, they're going to have a quick turnaround adding players to their roster, and that's going to really hurt their chemistry and just the camaraderie of the locker room, and I don't see them really being able to make the playoffs in the state they are now. And I think one positive out of this, I think Karis LeVert is really going to step up, and you're going to see him make a lot of noise in the Bubble League because he's kind of the only notable player on the roster. I mean, they did sign Tyler Johnson, who is pretty good on the offensive side of the ball. So
yeah,
Karis LeVert and Tyler Johnson can really kind of become more household names in this Bubble League and really step up for the Brooklyn Nets organization.
Definitely. Karis LeVert, I mean, before his injury last year, he was an absolutely incredible player for them. I think he was averaging about 20 points per game before he went down with that injury. Just really promising young player, but I do not think it's off the table to see the Brooklyn Nets win one game or two games or even 0 games in the 8 games that they are going to be playing before the playoffs, because this is going to be a very competitive environment. You have teams outside the bubble traveling all the way to Orlando, risking so many things, risking their family. So they're not going to want to go all the way to Orlando just to miss the playoffs. So again, you're going to see some really hard basketball. And with the Brooklyn Nets really depleted roster, don't be surprised to see them win very few amount of games to no games.
Yeah, and then you can see teams like the Wizards and the other teams that are outside looking into the Eastern Conference really step up and try to make a bigger push to these playoffs because, yeah, like you said, the Nets are probably going to win one game, maybe two, and they're going to drop considerably in the playoff picture. So I'm going to be interested to see which team is going to sneak into the 7th seed or the 8th seed. And you can see some like the Magic step up a little bit as a higher seed in the playoffs with the absence of the Nets.
Certainly. And I mean, when you're talking about the Wizards, I know John Wall said he's healthy, but the Wizards organization just kind of announced that John Wall will not be traveling to Orlando. So I'm really just wondering which Eastern Conference team is going to step into the Brooklyn Nets place, if any. I mean, those teams might be behind, and they're going to have very tough schedules as well. So, again, I would not be surprised to see the Nets win a couple games, but still sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, if they still snuck into the playoffs, that would be an easy series for whoever plays them. I mean, like we said in the last episode, those higher seeded teams are really going to battle to be able to set themselves up to play the Brooklyn Nets because that would just be a easy 4-game sweep or a gentleman's sweep, and then they're sitting pretty for the next round.
Yeah, true. And I wonder how they're going to start to stagger the nationally televised games as well. in lieu to this, I'm sure the Nets are going to get little to no national televised exposure, which kind of sucks again for guys like Karis LeVert, but that's what happens when you don't have a solid coach for the Nets right now. They still kind of don't have their coach for the future. They don't have their 2-star players. They don't even have the third guy they got in their offseason now. So, again, it's going to be interesting for the Nets.
I mean, and it's funny to see how it's KD's out because of injury. Deandre Jordan's out because of Corona. Spencer Dinwiddie's probably going to be out because of Corona. And then Kyrie's just kind of sitting out for a different reason. Just not injury. He's just sitting out for personal reasons.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I mean, that's kind of what you get when you have Kyrie Irving. I mean, we're going to see in hindsight what this deal they made to kind of orchestrate Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving onto this team, what it will do for their long-term success. Because I always said right off the gates, I know that D'Angelo Russell might not be as good as Kyrie Irving, but just the effect he has on your team in terms of chemistry-wise, it seems like that Nets team that made the playoffs 2 years ago had such great chemistry. So I'm really starting to question already that was bringing in Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant for the long-term health and success of the Nets organization. Was it a good thing? And I think this bubble, how they'll do, and going into next season, I think that's really going to be the question surrounding the Nets.
Yeah, like with D'Angelo Russell, his time with the Lakers, he was a bit immature, the whole fiasco with Nick Young and such. But then once he went to the Nets, he kind of matured a lot. But Kyrie Irving, I mean, he's an NBA champion. He's been in the league a while. He's still an immature player. So I think there's kind of, like you said, there's that difference with Kyrie Irving and D'Angelo Russell, and you can see how successful the Nets were able to be with D'Angelo Russell on their roster versus with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, I don't really think that you have teams that have gotten D'Angelo Russell, such as the Warriors and now the Timberwolves, are such winners out of this, but I'm not going to quickly say the Nets are winners of that entire kind of exchange for Kyrie Irving, for Kevin Durant, getting rid of D'Angelo Russell either. I think this could potentially be one of those situations where it's a lose-lose-lose situation for all teams involved, because obviously for the Golden State Warriors, you don't want to lose the second best player on earth and then replace him with a player that you're going to trade midway through the season.
Yeah, and then, I mean, interesting storylines to go into next year, seeing what the Nets are even going to be able to do when their big three with Kyrie, KD, and technically DeAndre Jordan, and then the other role players, how good they'll be able to be when they have a full roster in order.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anybody talking about this, but I absolutely can't wait to see what Andrew Wiggins can do on the Golden State Warriors, because everybody's kind of wrote Wiggins off as a draft bust. He's been in the NBA for 5-6 years now, so we really do know what Andrew Wiggins is, but he's still a really young player. You see some players, like Kyle Lowry, for example, really not be good until their 7th, 8th, 9th year in the league, and then they become an all-star. Then they become a key contributor to a championship team. So I can potentially see that happening with Andrew Wiggins. If he develops more of a consistent, just overall game, he's going to learn from the best organization in basketball right now, some of the best players in basketball right now. I think a large problem with Andrew Wiggins has been his inconsistency, has been his kind of reliance on the mid-range game when that's kind of dead in today's NBA. So if he can kind of transition his mid-range game to the three-point line a little bit more, become more of a catch-and-shoot guy, become more of a third piece, a complement to Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, I could see Andrew Wiggins in the future averaging 20 points per game plus and just being an all-star and being what he sought out to be when he entered the NBA.
Yeah, I kind of think the fault of Andrew Wiggins is kind of the fault of the Timberwolves organization. I mean, they've had guys in place to win playoff or become a playoff team. They had Cat, they had Jimmy Butler at one point, and they still weren't able to put it all together. I think them just being kind of an immature organization and not having the keys. I mean, they had Kevin Garnett years ago, and they still weren't able to make anything of it. So I think Wiggins being added to the Warriors, kind of having that veteran leadership with Klay and Steph, that's really going to help him and kind of take a lot off his back, because he was kind of the second option behind Karl Anthony Towns, and they just had such high expectations. So kind of having those expectations taken away and having the leadership of Klay and Steph is really going to help him out a lot.
Yeah, I feel like we've been saying the Timberwolves are the best young team, up-and-coming team since like 2010. I mean, even dating back to the Kevin Love era of the Timberwolves. They weren't even able to make a playoff push with Kevin Love, and Kevin Love was putting up 25 points a game, around 15 rebounds a game, which was absolutely historic when he was doing so. So good point you made on Andrew Wiggins. I know Andrew Wiggins certainly hasn't lived up to expectations, but I agree. I think that could also be more of the fault to the Timberwolves organization.
Yeah. So moving on to our next topic, we're going to talk about the Lakers, Los Angeles Lakers, adding J.R. Smith, Mr. Hennessy to their roster. Me and you, we weren't the biggest fans of this signing. We're not the biggest fans of this signing. I mean, J.R. Smith, don't get me wrong, he's a great offensive player at moments. I mean, you look at kind of the historic playoff numbers for three-point shooting. He's up there he's top 10 with Steph, Clay, and even LeBron at some points. He's great with being a three-point shooter, but he's just very sporadic on offense. I mean, he has that very infamous play in the finals game 1 where he got the rebound and dribbled the clock out for whatever reason. But what are your thoughts about this signing?
Yeah, and going off the point you just made, J.R. Smith is the 4th playoff leader all time in three-point shots made, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. I know the three-point shot hasn't been really shot at a consistent rate until the past 10 years, but still, that's a pretty amazing stat to think about with J.R. Smith. But still, I think everybody's kind of missing the point on this. I've seen a lot of people on ESPN, Stephen A. Smith, kind of talk about this being a positive signing. I know LeBron does seem to love J.R. Smith most of the times. They seem to be pretty good friends. With all things considered, that's pretty amazing that J.R. Smith has caused a lot of headaches for LeBron James over the past couple of years, but still, they are close friends. But I think, again, everybody's kind of missing the point of the signing. Yes, they're going to be good offensively, maybe even better offensively with J.R. Smith replacing him with Avery Bradley, but what Avery Bradley brought to this team was not only a consistent starter, playing consistent starter minutes, which J.R. Smith I don't think is capable of doing at this point in his career, but he just added a defensive presence, a perimeter defensive presence that the Lakers don't have outside of Avery Bradley, really. And that's not what J.R. Smith is going to bring to this team. J.R. Smith is going to bring streaky shooting. He's going to bring three-pointers. He's going to space the floor even more for LeBron, which, again, is great. But Avery Bradley still did do that. And, again, J.R. Smith is not going to be able to fill the void on defense that Avery Bradley left.
Yeah, it's not even like they're going to be at the same defensive level they once were. They're going to take a significant step back with J.R. Smith because, I mean, a lot of teams are going to get the ball to the player that J.R. Smith's on so they can beat him and go to the rack or be able to get a shot over him. He's just really lacking on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't think his offensive ability is that good enough to be able to be like, all right, we'll take his defense, his poor defense, but if he's scoring 25 points, it's fine. He's not going to be doing that, which is going to hurt them.
No, that's a great point you just made. Lakers and the teams playing the Lakers are going to go from absolutely avoiding Avery Bradley at all costs to game planning to attack J.R. Smith, and that's going to be huge for the Lakers. You're going to have LeBron James, who is still a great defender, but doesn't want to exert all of his energy on the defensive end because he holds such a baron, especially now that he's the point guard for this team. On the offensive side, you have Anthony Davis, again, a great defender, one of the best defenders in the entire NBA, but he can't exert all of his energy on defense. He can't guard a point guard or a shooting guard or even a small forward usually. I mean, you have JaVale McGee. Again, he's a good defender. He's a good rim runner. But, again, he's not guarding the guards. So you're going to have guys like KCP, who's unproven in terms of defense. You're going to have guys like Rondo, who's very undersized on the defensive end. You're going to have guys like J.R. Smith, who are going to have to step up for this team, guard some really good offensive players on the other side, point guards, shooting guards. And I just don't see that happening for the Lakers. And I think this is going to be a major blow to them because once they play teams like the Clippers, who have so many offensive weapons, they have Lou Williams, they have Paul George, they have Kawhi Leonard. I just don't know, looking at this Lakers roster, who is going to guard who, and that's just going to be a major problem for the Lakers come second round, come third round, come NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think the Lakers really should have pulled the trigger earlier on signing someone like Tyler Johnson before he went to the Nets. I think he's I think he's more consistent on the offensive side of the ball, and he's a little bit better on the defensive side of the ball versus J.R. Smith. So I think that would have helped him a lot. And then obviously we made a separate video about them signing Shumpert, about it in a previous podcast episode. I think Iman Shumpert is not good on offense, but his ability on defense really kind of makes him more valuable than he actually is.
Yeah, certainly. They just don't need offense at this point. Obviously, you would like the Lakers bench to be a little more potent on the offensive side. You would like some of their starters to step up more, score some more points, but offensively, I'm just not worried when LeBron James is leading your team. They can get it done. They can get the right amount of points done with LeBron James at the helm. He'll get how many points he wants. He'll get however many assists he wants. And same with Anthony Davis. I have no really concerns and questions about their offense at this point, even though they are lacking outside of their two stars. But again, it's their defense that I'm worried about, and it's their defense they should have addressed with this signing, and they just didn't do that. And I don't really know what the Lakers organization is thinking. I'm really not a fan of Rob Pelinka at this point in his kind of tenure as the GM and just kind of as the president for basketball decisions with the Lakers. I've really thought he's done, honestly, a terrible job of filling out the roster around LeBron since he's gotten there. I know a lot of that could be attributed to Magic Johnson as well, but he's not here anymore. So, again, I'm just really disappointed about their roster building for the Lakers. I mean, they've gotten guys like Rajon Rondo, who is a very good contributor, but very redundant in their rotation with a guy like LeBron in there. So, again, guys like Kyle Kuzma are going to have to step up defensively and offensively, and just some other guys they already have on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, their roster is filled with some guys that are unproven in the playoffs and haven't even been in the playoffs. So I think kind of the reason they signed J.R. Smith is his relationship with LeBron plus his playoff experience. But they could have even got that with Iman Shumpert. He's played with LeBron before. He's a champion with LeBron. I don't understand this J.R. Smith signing that much at all.
Neither do I. And I would think that LeBron had a huge hand in the signing, and I really don't know what LeBron is thinking here. Again, I mean, they do have some perimeter scoring options. I think LeBron is more concerned about surrounding himself with shooters, which is just always vital to LeBron's game to, again, surround him with shooters. So not only he could drive to the rim easier, but of course he can drive and kick. That's kind of his signature move. That has really been a staple for him, allowed him to be one of the greatest players of all time. So I think he was kind of more concerned about the offensive end than the defensive end. But again, he's really, really underestimating what great defense can do for you. Again, this team was third in defensive rating all year, and I would say they're going to take a significant drop without Avery Bradley, one of the best defenders in the entire league.
Yeah, I think this kind of puts the Clippers on a different level of being able to win the Western Conference over the Lakers, because before, when they had Avery Bradley, I think it was a lot closer than it is now.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I still thought the Clippers were the favorites to come out of the West, even with Avery Bradley. But now without Avery Bradley, yeah, I would certainly not be surprised if the Lakers made it out of the West, but I think it is certainly more unlikely.
Yep. So moving on to our next topic, we're going to talk about the basketball phenom Emoni Bates, the number one recruit in the class of 2020. So he just finished his sophomore year, and he verbally committed to Michigan State. So a little backstory about Emoni Bates. Like I said earlier, he's the number one recruit in the class of 2022. He's the number one recruit in the whole nation, technically, having a better grade than Jalen Green, who we know went to the G League, opted to go to the G League, and then Chet Holmgren, who is the number one recruit in the junior class. And also, he's the only sophomore ever to be called the Gatorade Player of the Year. LeBron never did that. Kevin Durant never did that. Dwight Howard never did that. So he's in a company of his own. But obviously, big news about him committing to Michigan State. Thoughts on him committing?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to consider. Michigan State was really the only college heavily recruiting Emoni Bates, which, I mean, to be the number one recruit, obviously, like you said, not only in his class, but in the entire nation as a 16-year-old to be named the Gatorade Player of the Year. Again, that's just incredible that more teams didn't call, more teams didn't visit Emoni Bates trying to get him to sign. And I know a huge reason behind that is because the expectation was going to be that Emoni Bates wasn't even going to go to college. He was going to kind of find a way to forego college and go straight to the league. I think he was trying to graduate after his junior year, and he was kind of hoping that by then the laws surrounding the NCAA and the one and done rule were kind of more lenient to kind of create a loophole so he can enter the league. I know he said just this past year he was league ready, which is just absolutely incredible. But still, I know when LeBron was getting recruited, it was very consensus that he wasn't going to college, but you still had many more colleges recruiting him than Emoni Bates. I mean, he's such a talent. And again, I'm just surprised to see only Michigan State really recruit Emoni Bates, but this is just great for the Michigan State basketball program. They've been a really consistent and really good basketball program the past decade or so, at least. But for the Spartans, I mean, this is really going to catapult them into just signing better and more really just great players, 5-star, 4-star recruits.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head with a lot of teams are scared of signing Emoni Bates or having him commit to their schools because they don't want to just waste away a scholarship if he's just going to go right to the NBA if the rules are changing. Because I know after Zion got hurt 2 years ago, the NBA went right to kind of preparing a proposal to all the owners being able to change the one and done rule. Because as of right now, you have to be older than your 18th. You have to be older than 18th or 1 year removed out of high school. So that leaves a lot of people having 1 year in college. And I think Emoni Bates is a lot younger than some prospect because he just turned 16 at the end of his sophomore year. So he's a bit younger. So, I mean, if the rules don't change, he'll be forced to play at Michigan State. Or I read an article on ESPN Plus saying that his dad is trying to create a prep school just for him to play after his sophomore year. So who knows? He might have 3 years there. And with his age, he can't even reclassified like players like R.J. Barrett and Marvin Bagley did to get close to the NBA. He's just too young to be able to reclassify, but he definitely is a generational talent. A lot of people are saying he's the best talent of this century, which is extremely high praise for someone who's only played 2 years of high school basketball.
Yeah, I mean, he was dominating the basketball world even in 8th grade with his 15U circuit kind of, but I just want to really highlight this is a just great job by Michigan State because you're never going to get great recruits to your program unless you take risks. I've heard so many coaches, Mike Krzyzewski, just so many guys kind of talk about they've made so many risks on these guys that they have such a little chance of signing with their program, but they put so much time, so much effort, so much heavy recruitment into this one player that it ended up working out. So just great job by Michigan State taking that risk and it paying off.
Yeah, because you waste one scholarship. Say he doesn't play in the league, you waste one scholarship. But if you do, you get the best player in the whole country playing for your school, which increases your chances of winning a national championship exponentially. And on top of that, I think if young players see they have Emoni Bates, they're going to be more likely to commit to Michigan State for being able to play with him and kind of building up their own skill set again in practice against playing him.
Yeah, I mean, highlighting Emoni Bates' game though, I mean, he's 6'9", and I would assume he's going to grow even more. I would not be surprised by age 18, by age 19, he's going to be a legit 7-footer. And I mean, you hit it right on the head. I know I hate kind of those Kevin Durant comparisons because that's so unfair to kind of stack a guy against Kevin Durant because Kevin Durant, again, he's such a great player. He was even such a great player at Texas. But Emoni Bates, I mean, you watch him play and his release, his jump shot, his game, his tenacity, it is Kevin Durant. And it really just is amazing to see, to watch. I saw a game where Emoni Bates was playing Bronny James right in front of LeBron, to be playing in front of the best basketball player in the world and to just still play great, play with no nerves, and just have your team beat the other team with LeBron James' son, I think by 20 at least, was just really incredible to watch. So Emoni Bates, I mean, it doesn't matter who he's playing up against, what age they are, he's going to get his buckets. He's going to be a really great player. And he even looks committed on the defensive side, which is something you usually don't see out of these offensive just superstars in high school.
Yeah, I mean, watching the tape, he's very aggressive. He was constantly attacking the rim. I know he definitely has a deep shot, and I don't think he relies on that too much inside the high school game. He's just so much better than everybody, so he's just constantly attacking the rim. And also, he's aggressive. And I think he's very arrogant and talks a lot on the court. I mean, obviously when you're that good, you're going to be trash talking a considerable amount. But after every play he made, he was screaming in the defender's face and saying something to them. So that just shows how confident he is in himself. But going back to the Durant comparisons, I mean, like you said, his shot is kind of picturesque of Kevin Durant's shot, and also kind of his dribbling style, low to the ground, his cutting with the ball is just very similar to Kevin Durant. And I went back kind of to watch some Brandon Ingram highlights to see if it was similar to Kevin Durant as well. But I would just say that Emoni Bates is a lot more similar to Kevin Durant than Brandon Ingram was to Kevin Durant. Brandon Ingram kind of had his own release, his own style a little bit, but it's very similar. I mean, if you didn't tell someone that was if you were talking basketball with someone who's not as into basketball as we are, they might think that was a young Kevin Durant if you didn't tell them. Honestly, it's just that similar.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, his game really just all around, it looks like it would translate to the college world, and it looks like it would translate to the NBA world. I saw a statistic where he was kind of playing in a national tournament, and he averaged, I think, 32 points per game. He had three-point attempts per game, and he was shooting them at about a 50% clip. So that's really amazing. I would assume once he gets to college, he's going to increase that volume of three-pointers, and I would just be interested to see if it translates to a deeper three-point shot and just more of a consistent three-point shot. But again, I mean, he really doesn't need to shoot the three all that much in high school because he can get to the rim so easily. He can get to the mid-range. He can just get to all of his spots so easily. And that's the beauty about Kevin Durant, is that he can get to every single spot on the court, and he can shoot at every single spot on the court. So if Emoni Bates could develop that, he could be a high-impact player very early on in his NBA career.
And also, I think what he needs to work on while he's growing, I think he needs to put on a little bit weight and more muscle, because he is very, very skinny. He had a very skinny frame. I mean, Kevin Durant was like that at Texas and in high school a little bit, but just if he says, I don't think he's NBA ready right now, just considering how skinny he really is, I think he needs to put on weight, because he's going to be playing against grown men in the NBA in that frame. I don't think he'll be able to kind of compete against someone like LeBron, who's like 300 pounds of muscle.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, putting on bulk has been just key for so many superstar NBA players over the past decade, 2 decades. I mean, look at what it did for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look at what it did for even guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Jimmy Butler. These guys all entered the NBA pretty skinny looking with a pretty small frame, and they had been able to bulk up over the past couple of years early on in their NBA career, and that really catapulted them into superstardom. So really adding bulk just to your body really does wonders for so many NBA players. Very few NBA players enter the league at their full size, at their full capacity, like we see guys like Zion Williamson today.
Yeah. So moving on to our next topic, we have some news out of the football world. Obviously, I think everybody has probably heard about this being talked about a little bit, but Cam Newton being signed by the New England Patriots on a 1-year deal, veteran minimum, but with incentives. So probably the incentives are if he makes the playoffs, he gets paid a little more. If he passes over a certain amount of yards, he gets paid more. But really big signing, because, I mean, Cam Newton's like, I want to be a starter. I want to be a starter. I'm not going to be a backup. So we don't know what's going to happen in New England with Jarrett Stidham. A lot of reports saying the Patriots are in love with Jarrett Stidham. So who knows what's going to happen between the competition between Cam Newton and Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah, kind of my initial thoughts on this was, why did the Patriots wait so long to sign Cam Newton? And then I kind of thought about it, and I think the Patriots really offered this exact deal to Cam Newton very, very early on in free agency, very, very early on into him being released by the Panthers. And Cam Newton was maybe even a bit offended by this deal, thinking he can get such a bigger, more significant payday out of his free agency run. And I think he kind of just looked at the situations, looked at so many teams filling out their rosters, so many teams getting these other quarterbacks instead of him. And I think he eventually kind of went back to the Patriots and said, well, this is one of my only deals on the offer on my table. This looks like the best deal, kind of a prove it 1-year deal. So let me go accept this offer with a great coach and a great player in the Patriots players and organizations. But My most just interesting, kind of intriguing aspect of this is not only will Cam Newton start, which I know is a significant question, but what's going to happen to the Patriots offense? Because now this is really going to test the legacy of Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. Because with Jarrett Stidham, I mean, you can just insert the Tom Brady offense and just run as is, run like you did for the past 20 years. But now this is really going to test the creativity and greatness again of Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick, because they cannot run the Tom Brady offense with Cam Newton under center. They're going to have to create an entirely new offense with Cam Newton. So that's really interesting for me to see, because Bill Belichick, throughout his entire coaching career, even before the Patriots, he's always had this pocket kind of statue quarterback, even dating back to guys like Drew Bledsoe. They're really pocket quarterbacks. So it's going to be really interesting to see the type of quarterback that has killed Bill Belichick over the last 2 decades, and that has been the running, versatile quarterback. So, again, that's going to be really interesting to see what the Patriots organization can do and what the Patriots offense is going to look like with Cam Newton under center.
No, I have to disagree with that a little bit. I think the Patriots are still going to implement the similar offense that they had with Tom Brady, with the quick, short passes, because Cam Newton having the injury history that he does with the shoulder injury and the foot injury. I think they're going to have kind of some quick passes to get the ball out of Cam Newton's hands quickly and get it to players like Mohamed Sanu, Julian Edelman, James White, Sony Michel, kind of get it in their hands quicker than risking more injury with Cam Newton. I think also once they get Cam Newton to a level of more 100% healthy versus not what he is now. We don't know what he is now, but previous years he hasn't been 100% healthy. But once they get him to become 100%, they'll be able to kind of open up the offense a little more, have him be able to run a little more, and kind of confusing the defense, because their defense aren't going to know if they're going to run the ball with Cam Newton or Sony Michel, or if he's going to pass the ball. I think Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick are going to really, really kind of create a crazy offense, and it's going to give defensive coordinators a lot of headaches, because they're not going to be able to contain someone with the Patriots having a running quarterback and adding so much to their offensive game.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a dramatic change in the Patriots offense per se, but I do think we're going to see much more shotgun than we're used to seeing with Tom Brady. I think we're going to see many more just multiple running back sets with Cam Newton, kind of two running back pistol type formation, where we saw that a lot with Cam Newton with the Panthers. I mean, just so many read option type plays. Obviously, Cam Newton's ability to run has been degraded over the past couple of years. It's certainly not what it is now. And even if he is still a very good runner, Cam Newton, again, I don't think the Patriots are going to put his long-term and short-term health at great risk. But I'm really interested to see if Jarrett Stidham can still go out and win this job. I would be very surprised if that did happen. But again, I know a lot of people in the Patriots organization still view Jarrett Stidham as the answer, and still view Jarrett Stidham as the long-term just kind of answer and successor to Tom Brady. But I'm going to be really just intrigued to watch some Patriot football next year.
Yeah, what I think is going to happen, since they did sign Cam Newton so late in the season, I think Jarrett Stidham might start kind of week 1, week 2, week 3, and then you can see kind of the second, or week 4 is when Cam Newton's kind of implemented as a starter, because he has 2 months to learn the offensive playbook for the New England Patriots. So I think Cam Newton, as smart as he may be, as offensive-minded he may be, it's going to be extremely hard for him to learn a whole playbook in 2 months. So I think Jarrett Stidham might get the nod the first couple weeks, and then Cam Newton will then later be implemented into the offense.
Yeah, I just think Jarrett Stidham at this point in his career, he's a guy who can move the chains, really work with the pieces he has, distribute the ball, and kind of let his playmakers do what they do best. But the Patriots really don't have too many, if any, playmakers at the offensive side at all right now. So that's where I see Cam Newton step up and be a better starter than Jarrett Stidham can be in the immediate fashion for the New England Patriots, because he's a guy who can create with not allowed to little to no weapons, because we saw Cam Newton on the Panthers have some really good weapons, but at times really had wide receivers who did not have any after the catch kind of playmaking ability, didn't really have any separation skills. So that's where Cam Newton, I think, would be a very good starter for the Patriots because he can really create on his own. He can play make, and he can kind of make things happen. Where Jarrett Stidham, again, he's going to kind of just move the chains, just like Tom Brady has been doing the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see there's similarities now with the Patriots and the Bills. I mean, Cam Newton and Josh Allen, I think they're pretty similar quarterbacks, and both organizations are great. The Bills are a little bit better with their offensive side of the ball weapons with Stephon Diggs and John Brown and Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox at tight end. But I think the Patriots really need to kind of develop N'Keal Harry more and kind of let Julian Edelman not give Julian Edelman as many like suicide type throws so he can stay a little bit more healthy to really help Cam Newton out and compete with the Bills at the top of the AFC East.
Yeah, and for the AFC East, just the other teams, it's really just frustrating because the Patriots have had the best quarterback in the division for the past 20 years at least. No other team has really even had competition for Tom Brady. No other team has really had any significant, really good quarterbacks play for them for long stretches of time. So you finally have a rookie or someone coming off their rookie year, someone who's unproven in Jarrett Stidham. If you're Sam Darnold, if you're Josh Allen, if you're Tua Tagovailoa, you're really confident in saying, wow, I could be the best quarterback in this division. Now, a former MVP, a very good quarterback, who I think is the best quarterback in the division right now, and Cam Newton steps in. And again, that's just very disappointing for the other teams in this division. So I do suspect Cam Newton to end up starting at some point in the season for the Patriots, maybe not immediately. But I do also think Cam Newton is going to have a pretty good season, maybe not an MVP-esque season, but again, a good season. And good enough so we can sit back and say, yeah, Cam Newton and the Patriots still have the best quarterback in that division.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Newton, before he got his shoulder injury by T.J. Watt, when he sacked him, they were 6-2 in the NFL. Their record was 6-2, so they were still a solid team with Cam Newton. So I think, I mean, he's an MVP. He won a Heisman Trophy. He's a really good football player. I think a lot of people are writing him off, but I think the Patriots are going to be very good once they get Cam Newton in the offense.
Yeah, and you almost kind of think that the NFL knew this was going to happen. The owners, just Roger Goodell, knew this was going to happen, really stacking the Patriots up to have the tied for the most just primetime games, the most nationally televised games. So everybody kind of suspected that the Patriots had something up their sleeve here, and Cam Newton was that player, that guy, that aspect that they did have up their sleeve, and what a amazing kind of wild card for the Patriots to pull out really late in the offseason.
Yeah, and very ironic when the Patriots signed him. I mean, you saw the breaking news of them filming the Bengals-Browns sideline, and then they so happened to sign Cam Newton the same time, and then all eyes are on them signing Cam Newton, and suddenly no one cares about them getting another draft pick taken away from them. I mean, it's the third time a draft pick was taken away from them in the last 13 years.
I mean, it's incredible. The most kind of low-key news is the Patriots had to watch film and kind of record the sideline of the worst team in the NFL last season to be the worst team in the NFL last season. I mean, that really highlights their struggles last season. I know they just came out the gate firing on all cylinders. I included, and many people in the media thought they could potentially go 16-0 last season, but once they started to play teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Texans, they were really exposed as a subpar team, and they really got embarrassed in the playoffs last year. I can't believe Tom Brady's last throw as a Patriot was a pick six. I still think that's very amazing to kind of reminisce on, but again, I think the Patriots are going to come back here with a vengeance. I still think with our division predictions that we did with this division, I still think the Bills are the favorites to win this division. I still do think the Bills will win this division, but I think the Patriots certainly have better playoff hopes now looking into the season with Cam Newton.
Yeah, I think it'll be a lot more closer than I thought earlier when we last predicted the division standings.
Certainly.
So moving on to our final topic of the day, we have the NFC North, our second NFC division. Oh wait, our first NFC division, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So we have the Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions. You want to go into a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, we had a pretty good division here in the NFC North. usually you don't see 3 teams in the division out of 4 have a 500 or better record. And that's what we saw at the NFC North. We had the Packers, we had the Vikings, and we had the Bears. Very competitive last season. Obviously, the Lions, they lost Matt Stafford pretty early on into the season. I think about midway into the season, that kind of just had all their playoff hopes, all their just team aspirations kind of go right out the window as they had very poor quarterback play after the departure of Matt Stafford. But I mean, looking at these teams, obviously, again, you had the Packers win the division. They went 13-3, but they did not win a playoff game. People kind of pegged the Packers as one of the worst 1 seeds of all time, one of the worst 13-3 teams of all time, which is pretty amazing to think about. Then you have the Vikings, who are the only team in the division to win a playoff game last year, played very good in the playoffs, just barely lost in the second round. And you have the 8-8 Bears, who had a very up and down season again with Mitch Trubisky. But getting into some of these teams' off seasons, I think me and Sam were both surprised to see. We believe each team, except for the Lions, really got worse in the off season, and I really think the NFC North overall and each team will be worse in the 2020 season, except for the Lions. And we're going to go into that and why that is a little bit. I think the Packers, I mean, really looking at their kind of bizarre offseason with Matt LaFleur, the first full offseason with their new head coach. I mean, it's really interesting to see them load up for the future. They drafted A.J. Dillon, a running back, for the future. They drafted quarterback Jordan Love for the future. And this team really hasn't done anything else in terms of free agency. They had really no key signings. They didn't really have so many key just losses on the offensive or defensive side. I know they lost one of their best offensive linemen in Brian Bulaga. They swapped him for Ricky Wagner, who really is not nearly as good of a right tackle as Brian Bulaga is. So again, they did lose Blake Martinez. They signed Christian Kirksey in addition for that, but again, just really no key signings for the Packers, and I see the Packers getting worse than they were last season.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that hurts a lot of teams in the NFL is the teams around them getting better. Not for this. In this case, we're not going to talk about the division getting better, but I mean, all the NFC teams got better. I mean, the Buccaneers got better. They made moves. The Cowboys got better. They made moves, and the Packers just stayed the same, and they stayed stagnant. So I can't see them finishing with a better record when other teams are getting better personnel on their teams and better weapons for their quarterbacks and stuff like that. I mean, the Packers, I don't think they'll be able to be as good as they were last year.
Yeah, I really think the Packers Super Bowl window in the Aaron Rodgers era has closed, and that's really sad to think that they've had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks, 2 great quarterbacks, really, for the past 25 years almost, and they only have 3 Super Bowl appearances to show out of it, 2 rings to show out of it. So they really did waste the prime of Aaron Rodgers, in a sense, the tail end of Aaron Rodgers' career, and they're really transitioning into the future with Matt LaFleur with this offseason of really not committing any of their cap to any players for the immediate fashion and signing the running back for the future in the draft and drafting their quarterback for the future, again, in the draft, trading up. So really a smart offseason for the Packers if you want to win later on in the decade, but really stupid considering they went 13-3 last season. They were a really good team last season, and to not really capitalize on this small window you have with your Hall of Fame quarterback really is puzzling to me.
And moving on to the next team, the Vikings, they lost some key players. They lost Everson Griffin, Linval Joseph, Trey Waynes, Stephon Diggs, just to name a few. So they got a little bit worse as well. I mean, they did trade Stephon Diggs for Justin Jefferson, but Justin Jefferson, he's a rookie. He's unproven in the NFL. Stephon Diggs is considered one of the best deep threats in the whole league. And I mean, also losing Everson Griffin and Linval Joseph, kind of their 2 rocks on their defensive line. I mean, they got a lot worse than they got worse. They didn't get better. I mean, that's like the Packers. I mean, a lot of this team, I don't know. The Vikings, they do have a great coach. They have a good offense. I can see them finishing at top of this division. I think it's going to be a competitive division between them and the Packers and maybe the Lions. But I think the Vikings will finish number 1 in the division.
Yeah, unless they really sweep the division in terms of divisional games, I really think the Vikings have 9-7 written all over them. They replace some key veteran players on the offensive and defensive side with rookies. Now, I do think the Vikings were one of the winners of the 2020 NFL draft, but still to have so many rookies be so in such key players in such key positions, I think it's just kind of disastrous looking at it on paper. You have so many defensive players through the draft, later on in the draft, they're going to have to step up and play significant playing time for this Vikings team. And I think the biggest loss for this Vikings team was the loss of their offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski, that signed as the Browns head coach. I think he's such a great offensive coordinator. He did so many wonders for Kirk Cousins in the play action game. And with their running back, Dalvin Cook, potentially holding out as well, I think this could be a very down year for the Vikings. I would still suspect them to be very competitive in the division. I still think they are going to push for a playoff spot, but I do not think they're going to be able to replicate a 10-6 record next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they can definitely go 9-7. I think this is going to be one of those divisions that have a really low record that takes the division title. So I can see them going 9-7, or even 8-8 and winning the division.
Certainly, I mean, if they end up winning all these division games, if they sweep the Packers, sweep the Bears, sweep the Lions, I could see this team winning 12 wins. But I mean, in terms of other teams in the NFC, in terms of just other teams in the NFL in general, the Vikings certainly got worse this offseason, and they're certainly worse than they were last year, even if they could have potentially a better record next year because their division got so much worse, in my opinion.
Yeah, so moving on to the next team, the Chicago Bears. Obviously, the biggest story for them is trading for the very large contract of Nick Foles and having him compete against their young quarterback, Mitch Trubisky. I mean, they drafted Mitch Trubisky to be the future of their franchise. I mean, throughout the whole history of the Bears, they've never had a franchise quarterback, and they thought they had that with Mitch Trubisky, and it turned out it is not correct. So they're going to have a quarterback battle between Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky. I mean, having the great defense that they do have and then not being able to solidify the offensive side of the ball is really going to hurt them a lot. I mean, a lot of people say defense wins championships. Defense is kind of the most important side of the part of the game, but having such a bad offensive side, if you're not going to be able to score points, I don't see them being able to win a lot of games.
Yeah, and I know this Bears team kind of upgraded at the quarterback position slightly, in my opinion. But looking at their offseason, I really think they're one of the losers of this offseason. I know defense in the NFL is the least inconsistent, or is the most inconsistent unit year to year. Offense is much more consistent carrying over from year to year. And we saw a slight dip in the Bears defense from 2018 to 2019. And I think a large reason of that is because the offense put them in pretty bad positions, bad field positions, but still the defense wasn't as good as they were in 2018. And looking at the guys they lost on defense, they lost their linebacker, Leonard Floyd. They lost their linebacker, Nick Kwiatkowski. They lost their linebacker, Kevin Pierre-Louis. They lost Clinton Dix. They lost some really good defensive players, including Prince Amukamara as well. So I don't really think they replaced any of these players really appropriately in the offseason. I know they signed guys like Robert Quinn, guys like Mingo that are going to try to replace some of their key defensive losses, but I see the Bears defense taking a step back, and because of that, I do see this Bears team as a whole taking a step back as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to take a considerable step back as well. I mean, Matt Nagy kind of, with Mitch Trubisky, kind of had to limit some of his offensive creativity, because when he signed with the Bears as the head coach, people had said he's such a great offensive mind, but with Mitch at quarterback, he kind of he couldn't be as creative as he wanted to be. So maybe if Nick Foles wins this quarterback battle, he's going to be able to open up a lot of things. But Nick Foles just has flaws in his games too. He's not as elusive and able to run the ball as Mitch Trubisky is able to run the ball as he is, or he was when he was the starter. So, I mean, you take one quarterback and put in the other, and kind of their games are kind of opposite, because Nick Foles can throw the ball better than Mitch Trubisky, but then Mitch Trubisky can run the ball better than Nick Foles. So, I mean, which case do you really want to take in this aspect?
Yeah, I'm sure Nick Foles is going to start off the season, but I would not be surprised to see Mitch Trubisky play again for the Bears at some point in the season. But transitioning into the last team in this division, in terms of record last year, it's the Lions. And year in and year out in the NFL, we see teams go from last to first in their division from year to year. And I think more than any other division in the NFL, more than any other team in the NFL, the Lions have the best chance to do so. I know they only won 3 games last year, but I do think they had a pretty good offseason. They got Jamie Collins, they got Nick Williams, they got Danny Shelton, they got Desmond Trufant for the defensive side of the ball. Now, I know they didn't really get much better on the offensive side of the ball, but they are getting their star quarterback, Matt Stafford, back, who I think is a perennial top 10 quarterback when healthy in the NFL. So with all things considered, they still have a very good offensive just repertoire of weapons. So I do think this Lions team is going to be much, much better than their record and their team as a whole was last season. I would predict this team to win at least 6 or 7 games. And I really do think on paper and going into next year, they can be better than every single one of these teams in this division.
And also, adding on to the point of their offseason, they had a pretty great draft as well. I mean, drafting Jeff Okudah. They drafted Deandre Swift in the second round, which many argued as him being the best running back in the whole draft. And then in the third round, they got a steal with Julian Okwara from Notre Dame, which he's a pretty physical defensive end. So they're adding key pieces on their defensive side of the ball, adding DeAndre Swift to take some load off Matthew Stafford. I mean, the Matt Patricia era is really coming into place now with all of the moves he's made on the defensive side of the ball. And I can see them in 2 or 3 years, the Lions becoming the premier team in this division.
Yeah, and I mean, if the Lions aren't good next season, I think Matt Patricia should get fired. I mean, he's gotten so many signings on the defensive side of the ball over the past couple of years. He has the offense that can make the playoffs. It's really all about this Lions defense. Can they end up getting it done for this team? So again, I know Matt Patricia and the culture he's set for Detroit has really been in question for some players, such as Darius Slay, who ended up leaving because of problems with Matt Patricia. So I think, again, if Matt Patricia is not able to get it done for this Lions team, he should be on the hot seat.
Yeah. So what's your order for this division? What do you think the final standings for this division will be at the end of the year?
I'm going to have my first hot take, really, of this divisional breakdown. I think the Lions are going to be first in this division. I know that's saying a lot, worst to first, but I do think it happens every single year in the NFL, and I do think the Lions are going to be the team to do it. I predict the Packers being second, Vikings being third, and the Bears being fourth in this division next year, but I do think the Vikings and the Packers could really fight for a playoff position as well.
That's very, very hot take with the Lions at the top. I don't know when the last time the Lions were able to win this division. I think they've been at the bottom for quite some time now. But I'm gonna go with the Vikings winning the division. I think they're gonna win kind of at a lower record, 10-6, 9-7.
Yeah.
Maybe even 8-8, and then I'm gonna go with the Packers at in the second place, then the Lions, and then the Bears at the bottom, despite them being a playoff team 2 years ago. So thank you everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about the NFC North, what are their standings going to end up, and we'll see you in the next one.